Hi everyone. I wanted to say hello, introduce myself. I joined RocketMill 3 weeks ago as CEO. So I want to say hello to all of our existing clients and anyone else joining the call. Privacy is an interesting topic because initially, sort of at first glance, it looks terribly dull, but it has really important components of risk. Really strong opportunities. And I think the one I want to touch on to start off with is the transformational qualities, because I know Reese is going to talk about the risk of inaction, and Brenda's going to talk about many of the solutions that Google are implementing in order to mitigate. But what I want to talk about is how privacy is essentially creating this transformational opportunity in the market, in that because privacy is creating big blind spots in terms of our data understanding of consumer behavior, it's increasingly encouraging us to model out and project what is happening in our ecosystem. Many of those qualities are very similar to the sort of traditional media insights qualities that come from linear media. And then the net effect of that is that over time, what we're seeing is this convergence of brand and performance, which has been talked about for a lot. People have been talking about the convergence of brand and performance for a long time. And the key challenges have been these sort of limitations in the tracking time horizon, the data fidelity, and the perspective of the people that work within those respective disciplines. And so as privacy is disrupting the market, what it's creating is an opportunity where those two perspectives increasingly can start to emulsify around a single measurement framework. We're going to touch on GA4 and how that can be used to unlock that. And where I think that the industry is moving, and I'll point to the amalgamation of Essence and MediaCom as a proof point of this, is that clients are increasingly looking for this sort of total performance, and it's one of the core methodologies that run through RocketMill as a business, because what we really want to do is move from using the cookie to create a sort of one-to-one relationship in terms of personalization, which just isn't really an option anymore, to more of a propensity-driven approach where we're understanding behavior, we're modeling out the gaps that we don't see, and that's creating an opportunity to increasingly integrate the different modeling approaches. Where we're finding the latency in the market is that people still are holding on to their historical subject matter expertise and the approach that came from those different perspectives. And so increasingly, there's an onus on all of us to be more open and respectful to different perspectives and different crafts, and make sure that as we come together to try and cooperate in constructive ways. So as we go through today, Reese is going to talk to how gaps within the data fidelity can create risk, and Brenda's going to talk about how Google's solving those. But I do think that there's an onus on all of us to try and increasingly collaborate in constructive ways to bring all of our perspectives to bear, so that we provide this sort of universal customer experience that has been talked about for so long, but achieved so little. We're going to hand over to Reese, who's going to talk to you about risk, but also opportunity.
Thanks very much, Tom. And thanks everybody for joining. It's lovely to see you all here today. My name is Reese, and today I'd like to talk to you about some of the changes that we've seen in the last couple of years in the privacy landscape, and about how they affect not just the measurability of your marketing, but also the performance of your marketing too. Without taking action to compliantly optimize your performance, you will without doubt be limiting growth. And it's my hope that today's presentations will give you the clear next steps needed for successful performance marketing in 2022 and beyond. So just a very quick history lesson. Over the last few years, we've seen a dramatic shift in how we measure performance online. Increased public awareness in how organizations are collecting and processing and using data for profit has led to legislation you'll be familiar with, such as the Privacy Directive, GDPR, and CCPA over in California, for example. But these are all good changes for consumers. It rightfully gives them greater control over how their data is used and how it's shared. However, as marketers, you probably had some interesting and challenging conversations internally about how these measures could limit performance and potentially limit growth. But these changes definitely aren't going away anytime soon. And in fact, we anticipate that future legislative and technological changes will only strengthen and expand the existing measures. You'd be forgiven for thinking that this issue is mostly about third-party cookies, because that's been the main talking point of the online privacy debate. However, in recent years, we've seen different browsers introduce a variety of privacy measures that dramatically affect our ability to measure performance online, including things like reducing the lifespan of first-party cookies, removing tracking parameters from URLs, stripping referrers when you move from one site to another, and browser plugins that can disable web analytics software. In a nutshell, our ability to measure performance marketing in 2022 is simply not the same as it was even just a year or two ago. And the regulatory impact and the technological changes mean that you're likely only measuring a tiny fraction of your total performance. And this might not be so bad if the impact of the measurability was predictable and it was uniform across all devices and channels. But unfortunately, that's really far from the reality. The impact of the technological changes is not uniform. So different browsers, different devices, different channels, and different tracking technologies react differently in different scenarios. For example, if you're clicking on paid ads in a Safari browser, you're significantly less likely to be trackable across a multi-day journey because your first-party cookies will be limited to only 24 hours. On the other hand, channels that don't rely on tracking parameters so much, things like organic search, are much more likely to receive the credit for a longer conversion journey. And that's because the same first-party cookie that's being used for tracking will last 7 days in a Safari browser because there's no tracking parameters involved. And this bias in the measurability of performance doesn't just make the reporting much more difficult and more complex, but it also has a direct impact on the bottom line. Now, if you take bidding algorithms, for example, in simple terms, they work by automatically allocating a budget towards an audience of people who are most likely to respond in a positive way for your business, such as placing an order. Now, these algorithms, they thrive on data. The more performance data you can send the algorithm to say, hey, these are the people I want to target, go and find me more of those, the more signals the algorithm has to learn from when deciding who it should or shouldn't target. But what happens if you feed these algorithms with biased performance data? You might have heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, and that's exactly what's happening with bidding algorithms. By feeding them this biased performance data, you end up in biased targeting of audiences out the other end. Now, to put this into perspective, Safari currently has a 34% share of the browser market in the UK. And we know without a doubt that Safari has some of the most stringent privacy controls in place, resulting in fewer measurable conversions on those browsers or within the Safari browser. Now, if your ability to measure performance on Safari devices is limited or it's inaccurate, then you're almost certainly under-optimizing over a third of your target audience and leaving money on the table. Hopefully it's pretty clear by now that the digital landscape has changed radically and irreversibly, and that if you don't take action, your performance marketing will be affected. But it's not all doom and gloom. You've likely experienced these challenges in your own organizations and wondered how to sort of tread that line between respecting customer privacy and business performance. But I'm pleased to say that I genuinely feel the industry is now turning a corner. Google in particular is leading the charge with the introduction of technical solutions that put customer privacy at the heart while maintaining measurability and minimizing bias. It's no longer necessary to sort of think of it as this battle between privacy and performance, when instead you can have privacy and performance. Now, without going into too much detail and spoiling the fantastic presentation that Brendan has next for you, it'd be wrong of me not to mention Google Analytics 4, or GA4. And this is the next generation of Google Analytics. It's due to replace the current version, Universal Analytics, in July next year. And in summary, GA4 is going to be central to performance in the Google marketing platform, bringing together measurement, attribution, predictive modeling, and audience management all under one roof, and really tightly integrated with some of the other products like Google Ads, DV360, and Search Ads 360. If there's one thing that to take away from today, it's that GA4 is here, it's available now, and it's going to be a pivotal part of your tech stack in the future. Your existing implementation of Universal Analytics will be sunset next year, and it will stop collecting data around this time next year. So if you want to hit the ground running, get GA4 set up now and start to familiarize yourself with the new data model and some of the enhanced privacy features. That's everything I'd like to cover for now. Thank you very much for listening. Next up, you'll hear from Brendan, who will be going into some further details about the technical solutions offered by Google to help you maintain performance without compromising privacy.
Thank you for that, Reese. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brendan, and I'm a product lead at Google for privacy-centric measurement. So I'm really focused on the solutions right now to help us manage and work with the evolving challenges we have with the ecosystem and privacy. So, you know, as Tom mentioned, it's a really good opportunity right now. And while initially this might have felt kind of a painful process, and we have all these changes coming in, actually, and Reese has mentioned this, we're turning a corner and we're actually seeing some really good light, and I think a better experience for the end user, which, you know, the internet really, really did need. Let's face it, we're all sick of being followed around by sunglasses ads that would continue to track us for an extra 6 months into the winter, you know, well beyond our summer holidays. So that experience, you know, needed to change. And I think the whole web experience has really been traumatic for a while. You know, we've definitely seen it. It's been a hot topic right across Netflix documentaries and everything else. And we see more skepticism from end users when it comes to how data is managed as a result of that. And there's more interest and there's more emotive response to it now more than ever. So, you know, at Google, we try to break these challenges down to have products that solve for this. And when it comes to privacy, you know, it is one issue, but we see it has many facets that Tom also touched upon, and Reese did as well. And what we actually see is on two fronts, we're building products to tackle these. And one front is the regulatory changes that we've seen that have come in over the last few years. And then we also have the technology changes that we've really seen championed by Apple, but also incorporated into other browsers such as Firefox, Brave, Microsoft Edge, basically anything that's not Google Chrome. And both of these are having privacy impact on how marketers understand and really get the most out of their performance today. So what are the kind of things we're looking at, and how does this challenge frame when it comes to the ads platform and what it means for the end goal of your conversions and understanding what's driving performance for you? Well, if we take a look at just some numbers to really illustrate and kind of size what the opportunity here is, or the impact that we're currently experiencing is, if we think about it on a regulatory change front, we're seeing, you know, opt-out rates of between 20 to 30%. So that's users who are coming to a site and making choices around not having marketing cookies track them. You know, we continue to see these actual numbers increase with, you know, new regulations and new guidelines coming out around GDPR, and new guidelines coming out from ICO as well. So we actually see that this will increase as well. And we've also seen, you know, the browser impacts can be up to anywhere between, like, you know, 30 to 40% of traffic coming to your site. So that means that there's a good chance that at least 40% of traffic to your site, we could be missing out on conversions and being measured by Google Ads in the platform. So let me put that into numbers and what that might look like. Now, this is a tool that we use internally at Google. You can actually reach out to your account manager or any of the Google team, or the agency here will work with us to produce this. But we have what we call a privacy impact calculator. And what we like to do is, like, we like to take the amount of Chrome traffic that's coming to your website from Google Analytics. We ask you for your current consent rate from your consent mechanism. If you don't have that or don't know it, we can always kind of use a market level one. But what this shows us here, and this kind of illustrates it, is that when we have a website that is a consent rate of 57%, this is the number we've used here, and we know that the Chrome share of traffic is 61%. So what this means here is that currently Google Ads has a CPA, or something that it can bid to in CPA, at £7.78. But what we actually see is that there's nearly 50% of conversions here that are not being measured by Google Ads. So actually, that probably isn't a really true reflection of the CPA. And again, as Reese touched upon, we're seeing bias coming into that bidding algorithm as a result of these conversions not being seen by Google Ads. So how are we kind of tackling this to bring more of these conversions? How are we bringing back in that 50% of conversions to ensure that, you know, we're measuring as much as we can? So two of the things that we're doing is we have two products that are each designed to tackle the two different aspects here. We have consent mode, which is designed to challenge the regulatory changes of opted out users, where we use machine learning to predict which unconsented ad clicks belong to unconsented conversions that are coming from Google Ads. So we're using intelligence to predict what belongs to what. And we're also using enhanced conversions to enable us to bring more observed conversions that are happening on browsers such as Safari and Firefox back into Google Ads to give them visibility. So what are we kind of seeing in terms of performance from these products, just at a very top level, to give you an idea of what the capabilities are? Well, from our own testing with enhanced conversions, we've seen a 5% lift in conversion rate across search and a 17% lift on conversion rate across YouTube. So this is on Google marketing activity, something that we ran with our own agency. But we've actually seen more significant results from some of our own clients, such as ASOS ran this as well, and they've seen a 31% increase in conversion rate on YouTube, and then they've seen an 8.6% increase in conversion rate for search as well. So that's pretty significant. And I think the YouTube one is interesting because ASOS consider this only a branding channel, but actually when they were able to get such good insights into the performance that YouTube was driving for their business, their approach to YouTube changed, and they actually started putting performance budget behind YouTube as well, or understanding how it all fits together. So having that bigger picture can actually influence it. And when it comes to consent mode, so what we see with consent mode, we can see that consent mode can recover upwards of 70% of ad-to-click conversions that are actually lost through that consent mechanism. So when users are opting out of being tracked, consent mode can help model the conversions from those users to bring that back in and just help fill out that picture and remove some bias like Reese is touching on, and actually make sure that the bidding algorithms that we're using are getting the best data that's possible out there. So if we put both of these products into play with the similar example that we looked at before, we can see here the same advertiser and the same tool. So once that we have enhanced conversions and consent mode in play, we're actually able to recover 39% of nearly that 50% of conversions that we lost. So we're actually able to bring that attributed and biddable CPA down to £5.59. So what that means now, these are not just numbers for the sake of numbers here. What this means is actually, and Reese is touching on this, is that we're giving more data to the bidding algorithms, that ultimately the bidding algorithms have more intelligence and can now say, actually, my CPA isn't £7.78, it's actually £5.59. So that means this auction that I'm now currently entering in for search for, the top keyword here, I actually know I can bid a bit more than I thought I could, and I'm more likely to win this, this auction, and more likely to get that conversion. And ultimately, there's better performance all around coming from the bidding algorithms and the platform as a whole. So this means that ultimately there's better performance. So we don't see privacy being at odds against performance at all. And in fact, both of them can go hand in hand. But let me go over actually how enhanced conversions works, how you set it up, and what it does. So to give you an example here is what we would have experienced in any of these kind of pre-privacy changes that came to the browsers. And this would have been a traditional, fully observable conversion journey that we would say have on Chrome. And what we have here in this experience is we have a user is doing some research on Google, and they click on an ad, and that ad takes them to the site. In this first leap from Google search, clicking on the ad, taking them to the site, we are dropping cookies to actually connect that ad click to that site visit. Then as that user goes on and goes through the conversion journey, again, when that conversion happens, we drop another cookie, and we're able to then have this cookie chain that we can match an ad click to a site visit to a conversion. So Google Ads is then able to put into Google Ads reporting, yeah, we have an ad click, we have a conversion, here we go, we'll fully attribute it, put it in there. But what has happened over time, and we have the new technologies that come in the browsers, is that if someone is on Firefox or Safari or Brave, what happens now is if they go to the Google search results page on these browsers, they click an ad and they go to the websites, what we have is these cookies get degraded over a 24-hour period. So if a conversion doesn't happen within that 24-hour period, and it may happen over many days or a week, which is quite common for conversion journeys, then we're losing that cookie along the way, and we're basically losing that ability to connect an ad click to a conversion. Now, as an advertiser, you're still paying for that ad click, and if that conversion has happened, then Google Ads doesn't see that as able to connect the two events, and we have that situation where we have the inflated CPA, and the bidding algorithm is getting skewed away from these browsers as well. So again, it's impacting the performance within the platform. So let me explain what enhanced conversion does. So here again is the same example, but this time we have enhanced conversion is set up on the conversion tag. And what happens is, again, we have a user that's on one of these browsers that using these technologies to degrade the cookie. Someone clicks on a Google ad from their Google search results page, and they're on this browser. Now, this user is signed into Google, so they can either be signed into one of 7 to 9 properties. It could be Google Search, it could be YouTube, it could be Maps, it could be Android. Once they're signed into Google, then we have that unified ID space across our products. So someone does some research on Google, again, would say, for instance, the cookie gets degraded straight away, and they go to the website. So immediately we've lost that first touch point between the ad click taken to the website. We don't have that now. But it's fine, because actually what we have is we have our database of signed in users, and we still know that this user clicked on a Google ad within Google search. We don't need a cookie because they're signed into that space. So what happens then with the next part of the journey? As they go through the website, they go on to make a conversion, and as part of that conversion, we have the Google Ads tags that fires on the conversion page. And when the Google ad tag fires on the conversion page, it's able to capture the data that's part of the conversion journey. So in this instance, it's the email address. And what we're able to do is when the ad tag loads to say, yes, a conversion has happened, it is able to pick up that email address, hash that email address in the tag, and send that hashed email address over to Google. And what we can do is we can actually do a lookup and say, is this hashed email address also a Google signed in user? If the answer is yes, then we can return to the Google search results page and say, okay, we have ad clicks that belong to this user here. We know we have a conversion event that also belongs to this user, and we can connect the dots and say, here's an observed conversion that's happened, and without any cookies, and we can surface that into Google Ads. So we're actually leveraging that signed in space in combination with some details that are passed to us by the advertiser to be able to connect that journey together. So question here from Paul, how many use the Gmail for both login and shopping? Yeah, we don't have exact numbers in terms of like sign-in rates for Google. It's obviously very high. It's not something that we share for many reasons, but I would suggest if you want to look at and understand your kind of amount of Google users you have coming to your site that's signed in, if you look at Google Analytics, for example, and look at the ad signals, so the Google ad signals part, you'll be able to look at like one of the top affinity audiences and look at your total amount of users, and you should be able to get a gauge for, out of your total users that come to your site, how many of them are in the top affinity audience. And that will give you a rough percentage of expected sign-in users. I also think if you're using customer match, and you're currently using customer match in Google Ads, you'll see very similar match rates as well. So that's what we would expect there. And again, the more you use enhanced conversions, the more we build up that match as well. So it's a product that continues to get better the more you use it. Let me talk a bit about hashing as well, because obviously it's very important when it comes to privacy, and we're passing PII to Google. So hashing is basically happens within the tag itself. It's done automatically, and it formats the email address correctly before it's hashed and sent over. So the hashing we use is an industry standard SHA-256. It's a one-way hashing. So with hash, unlike encryption, encryption is where data is encrypted and there's a key on either end. So someone can send encrypted data, and the person that receives it, if they have the key, they can encrypt the data and see it. Hashing is slightly different. Hashing, it's done through an algorithm, and the data is never unhashed. So a good way to think of it is like a double lock system. So what it means is that the information that's sent over to Google is never revealed to us. We don't see the email addresses. We can use an algorithm that's able to match one hash to another without actually unhashing the data behind it. But at the same time, what it means for Google is that we're also not revealing any of the users' email addresses within our database, because to Google, we respect our users, and we don't want to have any kind of issue where we would ever expose any of that data either. So there's risks on both sides, from the advertiser sharing PII, but also Google doesn't want to share PII. So we're making sure that we're using a system that's robust, that hashing is and allows us to do. The data is always sent over encrypted as well across HTTPS. And any hash data that isn't matched within Google's database, we delete that. So we don't store any unmatched data as well. And everything, so we retain any of the hashed emails, that we retain them for a 60-day period to make sure that we can match, and then after that we delete everything that has been sent to us. So we don't store it forever, we just keep it for a short period of time before a rolling deletion happens, to allow us to do attribution within the window as well. So what are some of the benefits of setting up enhanced conversions? Beyond what we've seen already, we've seen the increase in performance for conversion rate across search and YouTube. But what also means is that it's a future-proof product. So as we continue to see releases across Safari, Firefox, and on these other browsers, it means once you have enhanced conversions enabled, you won't have to change again. So as they continue to roll out updates, this technology will be able to make sure that you have robust measurement outside of cookies being degraded, which is really important. And it'll also improve measurement, so it means that there's actually more conversions, and we've seen this as well in terms of the case studies that I shared earlier. And this ultimately means we have a better conversion rate that the bidding can see as well. And overall, it gives you a better holistic picture of, and this is what Tom touched upon, data fidelity. You know, we being able to bring more of those observed conversions back into the Google platforms means that you can attribute better. It means that the data-driven attribution within the platforms better, because there's more data to actually unbias itself, make sure that it's giving you a full picture. And it also means that you were able to get more conversions right across the board in there and see it. So ultimately, it's working better to give you a more fuller picture. So the requirements for setting up enhanced conversions is, well, the first thing is that the website, we really look for what we call a deep conversion. So something that's like a sale, a sign up, something that's not just like a lead. And we're looking for a more hard conversion there. In that process, we're also looking for an email field that's clear text that we can grab. And so that's kind of the first important part. The second one is that right now, for enhanced conversions, it only works in the Google Ads conversion tag, or a floodlight conversion tag for SA360. It doesn't work if you're using Google Analytics as your conversion point right now, but we will have enhanced conversions for Google Analytics coming in the next couple of months as well. So we will have the full for all products. But right now, you must be using either the floodlight or the conversion tag from Google Ads. And the third one is that you should also already be pre-using the G tag, or the global site tag as we call it as well. So with those in place, they're kind of the three requisites that you need to get started. When it comes to setup, now I will recommend that, look, if you're really interested in this, please talk to Reese. He will be able to guide you on what's the best setup for you, but there is three options. So we have a tag-based option, which is what we deem as the most straightforward option, where you can set this up in Google Tag Manager, and you're able to make what we call codeless changes. So in Tag Manager, you can edit the tag, put in some changes around the CSS or the JavaScript on your site, and basically then detect where the email address is, and we can pull it into the tag that way. The other way is there's a manual way as well, so you can actually hard code changes into the G tag itself. It's an extra 2 lines of code that goes into the Google tag. So if you're using a tagging system, that's a tagging management system that's not Google Tag Manager, then this is the route for you. You'd use this one. And the third option is the API option. So if you're actually already using the Google API, we'll say for conversions, offline conversion import, then you would be able to use a similar workflow for enhanced conversions with the same Google Ads API as well. So it's consideration, if you already have that workflow built out, then you may be able to automate enhanced conversions through the API as well. But a few different options there. Like I said, I recommend that you speak to Reese. He'll be able to really guide you and advise you about what's probably the best setup around your own website. And when it comes to setting up enhanced conversions, what does it look like in terms of onboarding time? Well, the first step is there's terms of service to be signed within the platform. That's kind of the easy step. Then comes the implementation step, and this can take anywhere from a day to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity around your build and your tagging setup. And then once that is enabled, there is a 2-week period which we're able to start matching against. And in the Google Ads UI, there is a diagnostic tab that will be able to show you that enhanced conversions is working properly, or if it's not, what is the issue. And then it's from the 9 to 11 week period that it really ramps up, and you're getting the best performance and the full maximum matching from enhanced conversions after that. So next is consent mode, and really the consent mode, just to give you an idea, the first thing that really important here, consent mode is only applicable if you have a website that you have a consent mechanism, and that consent mechanism is blocking third-party marketing cookies until you have collected consent for a user. So if someone comes to your website, you have the splash page to make your cookie choices when someone arrives. Until they've made accept, manage, reject, whatever it might be, you do not fire third-party cookies. If that's the scenario, then consent mode is the product for you. If that's not the scenario, if you've tagged firing before consent is given, or you might have a different setup, then consent mode is not applicable yet. So it's for when cookies are being blocked by default in a consent mechanism or CMS system. So what does consent mode do? It actually has two functionalities. So the first functionality is that it listens to the consent status of the users. So it listens to if someone is opted in, opted out of cookies, and it will update the Google tags as a result to tell them that they can or cannot fire, or what's the scenario there. And the second part that consent mode does is that it actually is able to listen for any conversion events as well as the consent status of a user on site, and it's able to model any unconsented conversions and unconsented ad clicks that it hears along the way. So let me demonstrate how this works a little bit. So if we look at this central example here, where we have a user who clicks on an ad and they are taken to a website that has consent mode enabled, and they meet this cookie banner. And if they actually, in this consent mode, in this example here, if they actually reject all cookies, what is it that consent mode is actually able to do? Well, the first thing that consent mode is able to do is it will tell the Google ad tags, you cannot track this user, and the floodlight tags will also say, you are not to fire, you cannot track this user. And as that user moves through from page to page in the website, maybe going through the conversion journey, consent mode will check the status of that user for each page. So are they still opted out? Yes, they've still rejected cookies. Okay, Google Ads tags, you cannot fire, etc. And as that user goes through their conversion journey and converts, and consent mode will listen out for that conversion event that happens as well. And it will say, okay, I've heard a conversion event. Now I've taken note of that. Can I go back and look at the unconsented ad clicks? So the ad clicks from users who've opted out of tracking, and use a machine learning model to predict which one of these conversions belong to which one of these ad clicks. So how do we do that? How do we make the machine learning model to come up with, to predict which conversions belong to which ad click? So we use a method called holdback testing. So what we'll do is we'll build a model on the conversions from Google Ads that we can see, and we'll build that model, we'll say, against 80% of the conversions that we can see. And then when that model is built and it has built a model that can predict ad clicks and conversions, we'll then test that model on the 20% of conversions that we haven't trained the model against. And if that model is very accurate, then we're able to say, yeah, this model is within our threshold of accuracy. So what we'll do is we'll deploy it against the unconsented ad clicks and the unconsented conversions to be able to predict which ones belong to which. And then what we'll do is we'll surface these model conversions into Google Ads, reporting, just beside the other conversions as well. So again, this is bringing back and recovering those conversions that were lost through consent choices on a website. And that's the crux of how enhanced conversions work. So just to kind of recap from today, I think it's really important that, you know, we see privacy and performance and not at odds. Like we're developing products and we're wanting to have users to have the best experience, while also we want to make sure that we're providing trusted and not sort of any kind of cookie solutions or recreating cookie solutions at the same time. But really what we want to do is we want to collect the data as best we can in a privacy safe way. We want to measure that as accurately as we can, so where we can recover observed conversions, let's do that. And where we can model conversions from people who do not want to be tracked, let's do that to make sure that we're getting the best picture for our attribution. And ultimately, that means that we'll have the best performance within the platform. We'll have a more accurate CPA and better performance. And like Reece said, we'll have better algorithms that need that data to function as best they can. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm going to hand back now to Tom, who's going to wrap up with some trust and truth.
So I just want to draw out one of the big elephants in the room here, which is that Google are saying, give us more credit for our conversion pathway. And the reality, so one of the things that's always levied at performance in general is that it's very reductive, is that you go down these rabbit holes. And the fear with having less visibility of what the true value is that with an increasingly algorithmic approach, the echo chambers just get amplified and regression to the mean is a downward curve. So what I wanted to call out is our obligation at RocketMill as for many of you, your agency, to make sure that we're in the context of total performance, moderating and making sure that we think that this is honorable and has a net positive contribution to not just an in-channel conversion, but also looking at it in an absolute value creation perspective. And the second, in terms of truth, is that for everyone that's highly subjective, it's the reality. The reality is that the series of assumptions that we make dictate our truth, and every client's truth is slightly different. That comes from the sector they operate in, the conversion journey they have, the leadership in the business, and what their sort of corporate mentality is. And so we increasingly want to try and open up this narrative to ensure that we can talk about it and align on the assumptions that are going into what we perceive as our truth. And over time, that allows us to increasingly develop what I talked about at the beginning, which is a much more universal perspective to the contribution. As it currently stands, our view is that this is very valuable. And it's a really positive way of understanding consumer behavior in the context that we're seeing less and less of it. So I just wanted to leave you with that acknowledgement of our obligation in trust. And the reality is that there isn't a uniform truth. It's individual, and that working together, we can shape, evolve, and refine it based on how the market changes.